This is Catherine Getzky, host of the Hope Matrix podcast. We are here to share science, stories, and strategies for how to hope. I'm the Chief Hope Officer of the Shine Hope Company, and Shine is the mnemonic for how we teach hope. So when we talk about hope, we talk about how we use stress skills, happiness habits, inspired actions, nourishing networks, and eliminating challenges, which are our thinking patterns that get in the way of our ability to hope. Hope is a skill. You can measure hope, you can teach hope, and you can start practicing skills to activate higher hope in your life today. And on this Hope Matrix podcast, we aim to bring in guests, experts in science, people with stories, and those that have strategies for activating hope in your life. Hello, everyone out there. This is Catherine Getzky with the Hope Matrix podcast. So grateful to have you all here today. We are here with Denton in the studio today. It's the first time we've ever done a live studio podcast. So it's usually on Zoom, don't tell anyone. But I'm super grateful to have you all listening here today. And we are going to talk about hope and using the SHINE acronym. So the stress skills, happiness habits, inspired actions, nourishing networks, and eliminating challenges to hope. And we'll speak with Grant specifically about his own experience heading from hopelessness to hope and working with populations that are high in hopelessness. So super grateful to have you here today, Grant.
Thank you. We finally did it.
It's
been like a year.
I know, we've been talking about doing this forever, so it's pretty awesome. I work here with Grant in Reno. So why don't we first just start by, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do, who you are, what you do?
I am Grant. So I guess the brief is we'll try to keep it tight because I can go about a thing. But so I'm a recovering addict, heroin and meth user, and I was IV heroin and meth user. I was homeless for a while, and then I managed to, with the help of a lot of people, right? And if anybody ever says they're self-made, they're lying to you. Nobody's self-made. We all need some direction and some help from other folks. But I worked my way out of homelessness and got into a position where I'm actually helping the homeless. I operate a nonprofit called, well, not just the homeless, but any folks in need. I operate a nonprofit called the Karma Box Project, and we originally started as a grassroots community initiative where you gave people in the community a platform to give by building little library boxes, placing them places, painting them, and then filling them with non-perishable food items, hygiene items, socks, beanie caps, gloves, depending on what time of year, and then and hand warmers. There's a lot of hand warmers this time of year, this time of the season. And what is this type of year? So it really grew. It blew up real big, and so we got about 50 pantry boxes in northern Nevada. We're getting ready to place 3 in Las Vegas and Henderson in the next few weeks, and then we grew from a community initiative into a nonprofit where we do outreach on the streets of Reno and Sparks and in Washoe County, and then we have a workforce program where we hire folks. I can't say hire because it's a volunteer thing. So folks will volunteer. Folks that live on the street will volunteer to clean up the river for 4 hours a day, and then we give them a gift card at the end of the day for $50. And but that also helps us with our outreach efforts because we're able to get to know the folks and develop a relationship with them. So we get folks on the streets out there working and helping to clean up the community while we're at the same time doing outreach. And then we operate the Safe Camp, which is 45 tents. We're transitioning to Mod Pods because they're more sustainable. And then we also are getting ready to open up the Overflow shelter because the shelter has been full for the last few months, especially in the cold. The colder it gets, the more people are looking to get out of the elements. So, yeah.
Wow, that's quite a bit.
It's a bit. It's a bit. Yeah.
A few things. Yeah.
I'm gonna turn so I can really.
Pretty amazing. All right.
I feel like you're talking
we're
in
gonna
the back of my
reorganize.
Here we are.
That's right. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I met, I don't even remember how I initially met you, but someone said you have to meet Grant in Reno. And Reno is the first hopeful city in the world. So we're creating a model how to create a hopeful city, and the Karma Box project is amazing. And like you said, they're these boxes that you put around town, like they did for the library books, but specifically for Karma Boxes for things that people may need. And people put stuff there, and then they can take stuff there, and it's pretty inspiring to see. So yeah, I definitely have a vision for you for that being a global kind of thing that happens.
Yeah,
so
that'd be
pretty
cool.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yep.
Good karma. So yeah, really amazing. And he works with very high risk populations. And so, the first thing we talk about too is stress and stress skills and how people navigate stress on the streets. And I think specifically to you, how did you navigate stress and addiction and getting off the streets?
So here, let's just talk about the streets and stress.
Yeah.
It is a high stress environment, period. Let's look at the 4 constants of being homeless. One is that you're subject to the elements. So you're either really, really hot or you're really, really cold, and you don't get to really control that. You're subject to the elements, which can be stressful because you're always trying to get out of the elements or either get inside or get away, and then another one is that another constant living on the streets is that your things will always get stolen. Theft is huge, right? How are you going to get a job if I have to leave my stuff outside, knowing that when I come back, it'll be missing? So I have to carry all my things with me. I got to be careful when I sleep. So if I fall asleep, somebody could roll me when I'm sleeping, especially if I'm sleeping outside or wide in the open, so theft is a big deal. And then physical violence, right? The conflict resolution on the streets is physical. We're not doing too much talking or negotiating. We're fighting. And so that causes stress, and that keeps us guarded and protected and always looking over our shoulder. And the last constant is that you're always on someone else's property. You're always on someone else's land, on someone, and you're always being asked to move. So all of these things cause, your stress levels to be super high. You're always in fight or flight. You're always guarded and trying to protect yourself. And it, so for me,
Can I take just a second on that? I think it's really important to note that what we know about hope is that if you're in your stress response, you can't activate your upper level thinking where you're problem solving and creative and collaborative. So people that are living on the streets constantly in stress, how can we expect them to solve problems from that state? Their basic sense of safety and security is,
you can't, so you have it. Well, and you look at it a lot of whichever way the political pendulum swings or whatever your beliefs are is what's going to determine. So you got the pendulum that swings so far to one direction, and they're why don't they just get a job and get off drugs? Well, that's a novel idea, but it doesn't happen like that. And then you got the pendulum that swings the other side. It's let's just leave them alone, and eventually they'll organically find their way to motivating themselves to get off the streets, and that doesn't work. Right. And so, so we have to find somewhere down the middle, right? What would be the synthesis of those two ideas? And it for me, it was, and it's just me, right? So I'm a subject matter expert on living on the streets, on homelessness and on drug addiction, but I'm only an expert at my homelessness and my addiction. So in order to be helpful at other people's, I have to be in the trenches with them in the context of their living. And we've been doing that for the last 7 years. And what worked for me and what we find works for other people is being in a safe place, right? So if the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if my primary focus is if all of those are threatened, then that's going to be my primary focus, and I don't get to grow. So you can't do two things at once. You can't protect yourself and grow, because when you're growing, you're exposed, your underbelly is exposed, and you're vulnerable, which could on the streets make you a mark, and then you don't survive, right? So if you're in survival mode, things are different. So what happened with me is I was fortunate enough to get locked up. And I was fortunate enough to be locked up long enough to where I had a bit of a paradigm shift, to where I started to think a little bit differently, to where I was able to read a little bit and start to change how I saw stuff, and my head cleared up a little bit. I wasn't chasing my basic needs anymore. And I know that jail or prison can be dangerous, but it actually was safe for me. You know, I was getting meals, right? I was able to sleep, you know, I was able to like start to think in different ways. And so for me, it was having a safe place. Now, should everybody on the streets go to jail? No. Well, if you commit crime, sure, go to jail, but that's not going to work for everybody. So it's important that before we can introduce hope, we have to introduce safety.
Yeah,
you know,
right, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's key to hope. So how else can you feel safe and kind of regulate that system if you're on the streets?
Yeah, there has to be a place for you, right? And
Yeah.
And it's going to be difficult. Like we look at like us right now. I would consider myself a higher functioning person. I've managed to do some things, you know, I've managed to do the things, but I still, in order for me to change and grow, it takes a lot of work, right? And so look at someone on the streets who's always in a you know, fight or flight response, always like guarded and trying to navigate the system themselves. It's difficult when it comes to folks at that level. Need help.
Yeah.
We need folks.
And I think that's key right there. I mean, we have to support these people. We have to create safe spaces. And I think with what you've done at the Safe Camp, if you can talk a little bit to that, because I think it's not a, you know, massive building, but it creates a safe space for people to start to enter that process and get support. So can you just talk a little bit more about that?
Trust is part of it. Yes, you got to trust these people. You got to trust. They got to trust me. Know that like I'm not, you know, that I'm not trying to hurt them, you know, or gonna. When I say trying to hurt them, I think that like that these are things that have happened before. Like, and so we only judge things based on our prior experience of something similar to this, or you know, and so they have to be able to trust us. And how do we get folks to trust us? Well, it's having a constant presence. It's bringing them in to a safe place, but it's also explaining the whys. We're working with people's survival mechanisms, right? A survival mechanism is kind of like, if that's what's protected me this long,
Yeah.
and you're asking me to put it down, you know, so like, and it can't, so there's a lot of constant engagement and working with folks. So getting them into a place, that's a good gig. Getting them to change how they see themselves in the place, and getting them to change their operating basis, which is a real like rigid operating basis. Part of is, you know, which is part of the gig. It's difficult. It's difficult to do that, but it also takes like an authenticity of us. Know this, that if you're not authentic in what you do when you work with folks on the streets, they'll sniff you out. You'll be a phony and they won't respond well to you.
Right.
On the streets, the primary method of communication is body language and tone. You know, a lot of folks have limited vocabularies down there. And so we watch people's bodies and we're able to pick up on whether someone's authentic or not, because it prevents us from getting rolled, prevents us from being a mark. So when you have that real acute sense of somebody's authenticity, if we're not authentic as providers, you'll get sniffed out. Nobody will trust you for sure. Yeah.
So, but your Safe Camp, it has like 35 tents, is that right now?
Yeah.
And it's kind of a transition before, I mean, it's not necessarily a shelter. Can you just?
It is. We started out with tents. Now we're transitioning to Mod Pod's. Tents are not designed to be lived in. Strangely enough, you know, you shouldn't live in a tent. But when we first started, we're like, yeah, the tents will, you know, they'll go bad, but we'll just replace them. But at the rate they go bad for being lived in and the high frequency use of these tents in and out. And so we transitioned to Mod Pods. The purpose of the camp is when we decided that we're going to open it up, we did research on camps, and there were camps that, you know, you Google, you're like, what are the best camps out there? And a lot of people talk about certain camps, and the reason they like this camp is because there's a good community. They had an advisory board with the folks that lived there, had an advisory board. They had, one of the places had like a little micro business where they're chopping up wood and selling it, and brought in had an income. Not enough to support the safe camp, but it did have an income. The thing though is that the camps had people that were living there for 12 years, 14 years, a couple guys were there 8 years, and I'm like, that's interesting. The thing, and that's their idea of success. The idea of success is that we have a safe homeless camp. And but the thing is that stops the flow, is that we're still homeless.
Right.
We want to transition them out. So our mission and what we consider success is how to we want to take these folks and transition them into secured housing with stable income, where they're not getting them into hurry up and get them into a room that they'll be back on the streets. And it doesn't matter what you give people, it's what they keep, right? So a lot of times we'll hurry up and get someone into an apartment without giving them the proper tools to keep them in that apartment. And so in 3 months, 1 month, they're back on the street. So did we really solve a problem?
Right.
And so while we have them, our mission is while we have folks in this safe place where they're able to grow and then to think differently and then open to learning different survival mechanisms and a new operating basis, while we have them there, we do as much work as we can to when we transition them into their own spot. And some won't be able to go into their own spot. Some will need to go into a group setting that has a little bit of oversight, depending on their diagnosis and depending on where they're at in life and their ability to care for themselves. So it depends, but the idea is to get them to the next phase and where they'll stay there, and so that's the whole purpose of our safe camp. Is we're not a destination, we're just a part of the process. And the idea isn't to warehouse people.
Right.
The idea is to grow people.
Yeah, I think that's such a perfect example of hope and, getting out of they call them like unhoused, people that are unhoused. Now I know they're using that term a lot. And, it's getting them in a safe space. So getting out of that stress response, practicing healthier behaviors, and then setting goals to get into housing, but taking it down kind of micro steps so that it's not this big overwhelming thing of like, I have to go from here to being housed and living a normal life. But it's really, I think, really help people through all of the processes of that and really chunking goals down. And I mean, that right there, I think, is the science of hope, and then connecting people with other people along the way to get them support. So it's really amazing.
We have guys, gals that like are experiencing things for the first time. Like one of our participants was put in prison when they were 19 years old, is now 64, 65 years old, and has just now gotten an ID. Never had an ID before. So after they got out of prison, they just been homeless and running the streets and running that gambit, and so they never had an opportunity to have a real ID or ever really get right. And that's a cool thing, to be able to watch folks grow and get first and do things they never thought they would be able to do,
And, we take IDs, many people take IDs for granted. Tell us what an ID gets. I mean, if you don't have housing or don't have an ID, what kind of roadblocks do you have?
Well, you definitely won't get a job. You definitely won't be able to get a hotel. Let's say somebody gives you some funds to get into a hotel. You're not going to get into the hotel. You're not going to be able to work. You're not going to be able to apply for things. Like there's a lot of limitations to not having an ID. Some folks, all it takes is just going down to the DMV and going there and doing the paperwork. And some folks, you got to get birth certificates from New York. You got to do some research. And some people don't remember their parents' names.
Yeah.
It's like there's a lot going, and depending on the individual, it might take a lot of work.
Yeah. And if you're living on the streets and you're in stress, it's like, how can we expect that to happen without support and guidance?
I don't even live on the streets, and we get stressed out trying to navigate other people's stuff.
Exactly. I know.
It gets heavy.
Yeah, it's easy to get to hopelessness, you know, that helplessness and then despair about it. So it's constant kind of challenges, yeah, working. How do you manage your own stress these days?
So let's see. So I go to the gym. I go to the gym, but then at a certain point, the gym isn't stress management anymore. It's just something you do. So when it turns into just something you do, like, are you managing stress or are you just working out? You know,
Right.
and then so like I'm really mindful to have my meditation moment. So at the gym, I'll go to the steam room and meditate in there. Now there's certain times that you can't go because there's people in there very loud. You know, those guys talking about all the cars working on their trucks and stuff like that. You know, but so I'll meditate. And in the morning's my time. The morning is my gig. That's my ritual. Nobody can touch you in the morning. You wake right up, you smash half a pot of coffee, and then you yeah, and then I do an audiobook and I meditate, like, you know, you just close your eyes and visualize what the book is saying or whatever. So that if that's my what is it, my self-care.
Yeah,
kind of-
happiness habits too. We call
Yeah.
it stuff happiness habits. Morning routine, I think, is so key. I mean, it can really set the
Oh, yeah.
whole thing for the day. We talk about making your bed in the morning and just that one, there's a speech on it. And
Yeah, the Colonel.
I love, yeah.
Yeah.
I always we share that video, but it's just like doing that one thing in the morning that gets you like, oh, I can do this. So maybe I could do one other thing. And it just kind of keeps you going down that
And if
road.
you have a terrible day, you got a good clean bed to come home to.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, that's great. And what about setting goals? Do you work with your groups at setting goals? Do you personally set goals? How are you with?
I personally set goals. They say that if you have an issue or if you have some sort of character flaw because some sort of thing that doesn't, you know, that you can't get rid of, then you have to make it work for you. And I would, some would maybe call it ADD, right? I'm always, I mean, you know, I got a different attention span. Yeah, and I'm easily distracted, and I'm always like, so if that's my thing, then I have to create a lot of different goals, a lot of different you know, if I can't stay focused on one thing for a long time, then I have to create 3 small things, you know, and so like that's how I manage it and set is I'll set 3 or 4 small different goals. And I have, like, I'm driven by my calendar. So I have this, my knockoff list in my calendar, you know, and of course there's, when you work with this population, there's a lot of things that come up that are unexpected, you know, and it's not 9 to 5 hours, it's 2 in the morning, it's 11 in the morning. You got to be flexible for that. So I have to set goals that, you know, that can be flexible.
Yeah.
Or else I'll feel like
absolutely.
I'm failing all the time because
Right.
sometimes you get knocked off and sometimes you're not able to hit that. So you have to be able to adjust and which one's priority. And so, you know, I got my own system in my head of how I do things with all the other things in my head. But like
all the things.
I got a system. You have a main goal and you drive towards that. And a lot of times that's it too, is I think on our small goals, like if my thing is I close my eyes and I visualize where I'm going to be a year from now. And that grant is a real grant.
Right.
The quantum grant. Because I just made him. I just made him in my head and he's a real thing. Now all I got to do is manifest him.
Yeah.
And when it comes to like everyday practice, I know that grant because I made him. And so that grant in reality, a year from now, is running his own shelter, is working on getting programs placed in other counties or municipalities. So I know that grant. And so my daily practice is I don't do what that grant would do, you know? So, so whatever my goal is, I'm already seeing myself there and then practice only what that grant would do. And if that grant wouldn't do it, I don't do it. If that grant doesn't talk to that person, I won't talk to that person, you know?
Yeah.
Or, you know, not talk to that person, but like
absolutely.
with any relationships or things, I don't do what that grant don't do.
That's awesome. Yeah, visualization is so important to and believing in yourself and believing that you can kind of get there. And then, like you said, not if you come up against obstacles or you have to chunk things down or something doesn't work, not internalizing that failure and beating yourself up about it, but to really just be flexible in it and continue to go towards kind of that path.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Super cool.
Yeah.
What about networks? So we talk about nourishing our networks and creating nourishing networks, but like really important people. How has people and support? I want to hear about your grandma.
Oh,
Just played been important in your life.
well, so like you can't, there's Les Brown says that if you're the smartest person in your group, you need a group. You've got to hang out with people that know more things than you. And there's so many people that know more than you about other things, and be open to stuff. And you could be wrong about things. And so like, as far as like my network, like it started with my granny. You know, what's weird is when you're making terrible mistakes in life, especially as you're growing up, you know, you're a kid and you lose trust and for whatever reason, you don't listen to your mom or your dad. You're like, he's, you know, when you, there's at a certain point, like you probably should be listening to somebody. And my granny has been giving me advice for years that I never listened to until I was in a place where I was like, man, maybe I should just shut up and listen. And that was when I was in jail. And she started sending me books, right? And so that's like my granny sending me books opened it up for me to learn, right? And so it was, you know, started learning from granny. And then when I got out, I asked people to be my mentor. I would just ask professional people, like the lady that owned the sober living house. I was like, will you mentor me? And then there was this other lady that was held a really high position for Marriott. I asked her if she would mentor me. She showed me how to schedule things. People want to help you. You know, if they see a drive in you, folks will help you. Folks want to help. But you got to also be driven, and you know, mentors will give you tasks. Anyways, I think it's you don't just have one person that's your guide. You have a bunch of people, and you talk and you listen more than you talk. Kind of, yeah, I do talk a lot, but but it's listening and watching and that. So I think, is that, did I
It's
answer that?
absolutely no, and that's what's so important about hope is hope is future orientation. So you have a vision for something in your future, writing things down and as it relates to goals, and then having someone to support you, to check in with you, to hold you accountable.
Yep.
You know, to not berate you when you don't accomplish things, but to kind of continue to prod you along, and like being accountable to someone is just so important. And so to me, I talked with Grant, I think it was yesterday, about your grandma and the granny project, which I still I want to give a plug for that. But I mean, older people too love to help and support. And so having that connection when you're in jail, I mean, and when you have that time and space to kind of sit with that, and just you sharing how you started to become open to her and listening, and then how she supported you in that. I think it's really pretty amazing. And if everyone that was in prison could have that, a granny.
Have my granny.
Have your granny, sorry, yes. Grant's granny, but really awesome. Do you want to say anything else?
No, I like the gig. I like what you're doing. Hope is a big deal, but it's difficult sometimes to find.
Oh,
you know, and if
it feels virtually impossible sometimes, especially when you're dealing with. I mean, there are so many things in life that people are dealing with, and yet, I mean, that's why I think it's so important that we take people that have had experiences and different things that have come out. And you know, life isn't perfect. Life isn't perfect for anyone. And yet these people, like, we're all continuing to manage, again, the hopelessness, which is the despair and the helplessness we feel about, you know, a lot of different things. And we manage it on a daily basis, and we continue to move forward to a better kind of future or vision for what we want.
Like when I remember moments of being like, because I would have these counselors be like, are you helpless or are you hopeless? And I'm like, both. I don't know. Like, who cares? I feel like shit. I don't think I'm gonna go anywhere. I don't think I'm ever gonna do anything. And if you look at it, like up to now, if this is who I am, I'm in jail, I have kids, I haven't raised, I like don't have a career, I don't even know what I'm gonna do with myself. Yeah, absolutely, I'm hopeless and helpless, and then how do you find that? And I think a lot of it's just like what helped me, and I think what can help folks is I attach myself and what I was doing to being happy. Like I really wanted to be happy. And then if you track it, like I was happy when I was doing drugs at certain points, right? Like you could, I was like, so and then so that's not the kind of lifestyle I don't want to get a dude that has to chase happiness. Like it's a because I was happy without hope, I can be happy without hope. I think when through the process, I read something, I can't remember where I read it from, but it was, they talk about like, it's not about driving towards a happy life, because happiness is an emotion. And if you're not happy, maybe you feel like you failed at something. When you didn't fail, you're just not happy. It's okay.
Yeah.
But like, it's about having a meaningful life,
Absolutely.
And how do you find meaning in life? Well, and also like, like that's what, because we're constantly going to fail. And if you talk to any entrepreneur, anybody that's doing really well in life, they tell you to fail fast and see it differently. It's not a loss, it's a lesson. Like, what do you count your L? And so like getting to hope, I also had to change my perspective on like what I considered success. Like success for me was just having a meaningful goal, a meaningful grant to drive towards. Once I have that, whether I'm happy or sad getting there, I know I can still get there, and that made me hopeful. Like, knowing that I can do some things, I can do stuff, but I don't have to do it right out of the gate. I just got to move towards it. As long as they call it the aggregation of marginal gains. As long as I'm improving a little bit every day, and I can do that, I can improve by making my bed. Boom, gotcha. And you can do
those small chunky numbers. Absolutely.
So that was, I guess, for if you track for me, what like helped me was like being able to read that, being able to be like, you know what, I can do some stuff. I'm capable of doing things, and not necessarily seeking out being a happy person, but being a person that drives towards a meaning, purpose.
Yeah, and I mean that to me, there's like a situational happiness, and then there's long-term happiness they talk about. So it's those when you're in despair and you choose drugs because drugs feel better than the despair and pain you're in, that might seem like happiness, but that's not really long-term kind of sustainable happiness. And so I mean, when I think about it, I think I can't be happy until I'm first hopeful and moving toward, but to me, happy is a long-term kind of thing. And it's habits, health habits that I continue to practice, and things that continue to bring me joy, that help me achieve that kind of hopeful kind of state and mindset and way of living. But it's I mean, it's managing all of that on a regular basis. And I think, too, when you are overwhelmed with hopelessness and the number of things that, you list off these litany of things that you were hopeless about, the kids and the drugs and and tackling one of those issues at a time, I think is so important. So, chunking it down to how can you manage the despair about that's your kids, and then, how do you feel those feelings related to it without acting out on those feelings, like turning to drugs or violence or those kinds of things. And then how do you manage the helplessness, and how do you start, taking actions to kind of getting to a better place with your kids? And to me, looking back to when you were sitting there, I look at you have used the hope skills so well in all of those different areas to where you now have a different life that maybe you couldn't have imagined at that time. I don't know.
Oh no, there is. At a certain point, what early on, and like what speaks to like your about just little things here and there is, I read something about Anton Chekhov. I actually have it tattooed on my leg. I have it tattooed on my leg there.
Wow.
And in the book, anyways, in the story about Anton, he was at a point in his life where him and his mom were homeless, and he started to move towards a life of crime. And then we had this moment where he's like, what am I doing? And he could either go continue the way he's going and live this life of crime and on the other end of the law and possibly prison and death or whatever, or he could turn around and move the other way. But but for me, it was the same as him. Like there was so much, like I've done so much damage. I lack this skill, I lack that skill, I'm not this, and like, and all these, like you're saying, a litany of terrible things. He was like, when it's so much, like, where do you start? And he wrote down this phrase, or not this phrase, but he said it. He wrote, he wrote down, he said to himself, no more bowing and apologizing to people, no more blaming and complaining, no more disorderly living or wasting time. The answer to everything is work and love. Work and love. And I remember I read that, I was like, holy shit, that's it. That's it. It's simple.
Yeah.
You shut up.
Yeah.
You do the work and
Yeah.
you love on things and you love on people. And as you work, then you start to learn and you're open. You know what I mean? And that was my simple like piece, is to be able to just work, do the work and love and be authentic, right? Love is an authentic thing. It's love is all, that's it, and so like if you can love on things and just do the work and move towards something, then you can start piecing out, start chunking these things out, and you'll learn as you go and you accept things, and like that was, so that's like I needed something simple. I mean, labor and love. That's it. Shut up and you love on stuff and you do the work.
Right. That's amazing. Yeah. It's really good to break it down to simple things too when we're overwhelmed, for sure.
Yeah.
The last thing I just want to eliminating challenges to hope, which are thinking, thought patterns, controlling things outside of our control. But like rumination, I'm sure when you're in prison, ruminating becomes.
Oh yeah.
How do you stop that? What did you do to how?
So there's a lot of things, because like you should probably, right? So Dr. Sapolsky, he talks about why zebras don't get ulcers, and like a zebra's getting chased by a lion. He's hunting him down in the tall grass, and the zebra's running, and the lion's nipping at his hooves, and then the zebra gets away, and he goes back to the herd, and he does a little trauma shake. He shakes it off, and that's it. Like he doesn't go back to the herd. He doesn't say, "Hey guys, did you see the lion? He was trying to kill me. It was terrible." And then months later, hey guys, you remember 4 months ago that lion tried to, like, they don't hold on to it. They just shake it and go.
Yeah.
Humans are the only mammal or living thing that punish themselves hundreds of thousands of times for one sin. We do one thing wrong and we punish ourselves for it. And I think like what identifying what that is, and understanding your dichotomy of control, like what's in your sphere of influence and what isn't. And like I do it to this day, right? They say at the end of the day, you should do an inventory on your conversations that you have, while you're laying in bed, do an inventory on conversations you had, and when you're driving home, things. And maybe I could have corrected it. You're in a conversation with someone, you say something silly, you're like, oh shit, maybe I shouldn't have said that, right? But what you do is you can't ruminate on what happened, right? You have to, because there's some scenarios where that might happen again. Like I just look for correcting measures. I visualize, and this is what I do, is I'll visualize myself in that moment saying the right thing or doing the right thing.
Love that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And then it's crazy, but it's like it's auditioning for your next role. Right. So like I visualize that. I've been in things where like I kind of bursted out, or I said something that like was maybe I have a belief system about something, and I tried to like press that onto somebody, which can be uncomfortable for people, and I noticed that in the person's face, and I'm like, oh crap. And so I visualize myself saying the right thing, doing the right thing, because there's nothing I can do about what just happened. But what I can do is audition, or not audition, but I can practice for the next time it happens. So I visualize myself doing the right thing, because something similar will happen. No,
Yeah, absolutely.
So
and the other thing I love in recovery that doing is looking at taking an inventory of the day, looking at resentments and what we're resentful about, what we're angry or upset about, and then looking at how we created that in our own, like how did we play into that, whatever, taking the victim mentality kind of out of it and looking at what we're doing and how we can, continue to improve and evolve.
Well, and that's it too, is like just asking, what is my role?
Right.
Because you have a role in everything.
I
And
know.
you probably made a mistake somewhere. You probably feel it somewhere, and it's okay, because that's what we do.
Right.
But you're not gonna stay the same person
Yeah.
unless you identify what that is, and then like rehearse over, okay, all right, next time it happens, we'll do this, and you just visualize that, and that's it. You just see yourself doing it right.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Love it.
Thank you.
Amazing. Well, I'm so excited. We're so lucky to have Grant here today because he's opening tomorrow now.
Tomorrow night. Yeah, it was gonna be tonight, but
Yeah.
we're moving it to tomorrow night. We're open. There's gonna be 56 beds. We're accepting pets. We're gonna have a storage place for property. A lot of times people can't get into shelters because you have 2 shopping carts full of things. You have 1 shopping cart full of things. And whether we would consider it trash or not, like what are you doing with 5 5 bicycle frames, no tires, and a rug? It's what like there's things that we would consider trash that maybe it's not trash to them, maybe it's their belongings, whatever. But those things limit people from being able to get into most shelters. So for this overflow shelter, we're just for the night. The mission is to keep people safe, give folks a warm, safe place to sleep. That is all. So when you come in, we will take your property, we'll put it into a storage unit. We have another storage unit. We'll put it in there. We'll hold it for the night. Give you a safe spot. You can have pets. You can even if you're 86 from other shelters, you'll be able to come to us. So we'll take everybody.
Amazing.
So 56. I
That's
think I
awesome.
said that, but anyways.
Yeah, and how can they find out about the Karma Box project?
We don't have the coolest website.
Working on it.
We're working on it.
Maybe
It's
you can volunteer to work on the website.
yeah, if you're smart. There's also some smart people.
Or you have a lot of money.
Yeah, thank you. That's it. We go to Karma Box Project Facebook page is really cool. Just like it, and you can see what we're doing. And then there's a map on there where the karma boxes are, and then you can message us through there, or you can go to karmaboxproject.org and you can donate on the karmaboxproject.org.
Awesome. And I know you're working to create a model for how people can then license it, put them in their own areas around the world. So we're working on that.
Yeah. I was like,
you're like, I am committed. I'm working on that. Yeah, no, super excited about it. I think they should be like library boxes, but karma boxes all over the world. People, we've got to create a safer environment. If you want violence to end, if you want addiction to end, to me, it starts with safety and the work you're doing and hope, really. So
yeah, so that's what I think what we need. Like right now, if you look at it, they're like, we have, we're understaffed, there's not enough people to work, there's this, that, and that's true. So, and a lot of our staff that work with this population are a check away from being on the streets, or check away from being a client.
Right.
So like I think we as a community or the agencies need to have a really hard focus on our employees, bringing them in, grooming them, giving them the proper training, support, just going to work on our employees. And because if you create better people, you create better employees, you have a better agency, you have a better product. And if our product is people, then we got to work on our people.
Absolutely.
That's what it is. We're growing people. So
and they deal with some of the biggest challenges. So really high risk for hopelessness and repeated despair and helplessness. And if you don't manage proactively that hopelessness, it leads to anxiety, depression, and so
all the things.
Yeah. So definitely companies that have high risk for those areas need to practice hope skills even more so. Supportive companies and environments for staff. So important.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Cool. Anything else you want to mention before we check off?
No, I'm good.
Thank you all so much for listening. I know it's been a while since we've been on the Hope Matrix, but we've been working very hard. So hopefulcities.org. Be sure to check it out. We're working to create May 2nd the first Monday in May, which is May 2nd this year, a Day for Hope, and we'll have a 5-day Hope Challenge that anyone can participate in. So you can go to Hopeful Cities and sign up for our news and learn more about that. We have our K-6 programming, Hopeful Minds. We just launched Hopeful Mindsets on the college campus for college students around the world. And we're also working on developing a teen program. So how teens can teach other teens how to hope. Very high in hopelessness right now. So, but yeah, we know hope is a skill you can practice. So no matter what life brings, you can always find your way from hopelessness to hope. So thank you so much. Thanks, Grant.
Thank you.
For joining today, and thanks all for listening today. It was great to have you here and great to be back on board. So take care and be in touch.
So thank you all for listening in to the Hope Matrix podcast. We want to shine a light that hope is teachable, hope is measurable and teachable, and provide you with actionable insights for how you can start activating hope in your life today, and provide a framework so you can start talking about hope with other people and practice these skills together, because we are better with hope. Please feel free to check out the shinehopecompany.com, where we list all of our resources around how to hope. We have a lot of free programs for how to hope, including the 5-day challenge, our hope infographic with a lot of skills that showcase how to hope, and articles of how to incorporate hope into your life. We have the Hope Beat Weekly, which is a weekly newsletter that shares strategies for hope. We have a My Hope Story template, so you can write your own hope story today. Also, My Hope Hero, so we can share what our heroes are doing to activate hope in their lives. And this is especially good with youth, so they can start looking up to people that have overcome similar challenges to them and seeing how these heroes use the Shine Hope framework. We have a Hopeful Minds for Teens program, a Hopeful Minds overview, educator guides. We have a new evidence-based college course so you can activate hope on the college campus. There are programs in the workplace, overview courses, 90-minute courses for learning the what, why, and how to hope. What I want you to know about hope is it's a skill. You've got to practice these skills to become hopeful. It's easy to fall into despair and helplessness when we deal with challenges in life, and it takes intentional work and practice to get to hope. And yet it is always possible. So no matter what life brings, keep shining hope. Thanks so much for listening in. Have an awesome day. And of course, I've got to add that this program is designed to assist you in learning about hope. It should not be used for medical advice, counseling, or other health-related services. I, Fred, the Shine Hope Company, and myself, Catherine Getsky, do not endorse or provide any medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. I am not a medical doctor. The information provided here should not be used for the diagnosis or treatment of any medical condition, and cannot be substituted for the advice of physicians, licensed professionals, or therapists who are familiar with your specific situation. Consult a licensed medical profession or call 911 if you are in need of immediate assistance. And be sure to know the crisis hotline, 988, if you are in need of support. Thanks a bunch for listening. Take good care of yourself and keep shining hope.